This is In the Fight, a Section 247 show presentation. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at In the Fight Show. On Facebook at facebook.com/In the Fight Show. Yes, welcome back to In the Fight. We are a Section 247 presentation, presented as always by Michael's Glass Company, serving the Philadelphia tri-state area since 1978. 215-338-3293. Tell them that Mike and Brett sent you. Follow us on all social media at In the Fight Show. Brett, how are we today, sir?
I'm hanging in. How you doing?
I can't complain. Let's get right into it here. UFC 254. The schedule is scheduled, as they say. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia. It is official. Dana White went with the Twitter recommendation of the champ. Marlon Moraes, Corey Sandhagen. That's fight night. So let's stick with 254. What do you think there?
Well, it's pretty interesting. We were arguing back in the day whether Jose Aldo deserved that title shot after one performance in the bantamweight division and lost. Cody Garbrandt has never fought in the flyweight division, and even though he's coming off a win, prior to that he's coming off a 3-fight losing streak. So it's pretty interesting. But he's a big name.
Does he deserve the title shot?
Does he deserve it? Not entirely, but it's good for business because he's a big name. And if he wins, it'll bring notoriety to the flyweight division. They'll finally have a star that people see. So Demetrius Johnson was a great flyweight champ, right? Nobody cared.
Right.
Then they had Henry Cejudo, a tremendous fighter. People cared about him, but they didn't like him because he tried to be creepy.
Okay.
Cody Garbrandt, people legitimately like. And he has a shot to beat Figueiredo, and it should be a really good fight.
So this is a lack of faith in the existing division.
Yeah, this is a lack of faith in their star power, not their competency.
Okay, fair enough. But part of this game is star power. Part of the game is to promote yourself outside of the cage, the ring, whatever it may be. Not go pro wrestling completely, but to become bigger than what you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, one guy who I wonder if he's kicking himself right now is friend of the show, Lenny Rufati's teammate, Sergio Pettis, who made the jump to Bellator, because right now he has a name, obviously, mostly because of his brother, Anthony.
Yeah, but still, it's okay.
But he's marketable.
Right.
And he would probably step in right now and be the challenger against Figueiredo. But you have Brandon Moreno, you have Ansar Angarov, who fought on the main card when Figueiredo beat Benavidez for the belt. But he's just sort of he's an average tough guy from Dagestan. And except for Khabib, the rest of them are kind of nameless to the public.
Right.
So, and Cody Garbrandt's a star. He's a needle mover. So he supposedly walks around not much heavier than the bantamweight limit, which means he could probably get down to flyweight. But it'll be interesting because he's never fought there. I don't know if he's ever done the whole cut, but they're banking on it, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're banking on it, so that's it.
Yeah.
Valentina Shevchenko, Jennifer Maia for the women's flyweight title. We didn't know. Well, we knew, but we didn't really know whether or not the UFC was going to book Maia for this fight.
Yeah.
Based off of her win over Calderwood. Now, the tweet came out immediately post-fight to the point where it was brought up in the immediate interview.
Yeah.
But the UFC could have said, no, we're going to go in another direction. They didn't. So Jennifer Maia gets her title shot. Good or bad for her? I mean, good for her, but...
Well, it's good for her. Does she have a chance? Look, if she looks and fights the way she did against Joanne Calderwood, she has a better chance than some of Shevchenko's recent opponents Having said that, she's still going to be a sizable underdog. I still believe that Shevchenko is the best female fighter of all time. At minimum, she's at absolute worst, she's number 2. So she's going to be a heavy favorite. She's more well-rounded, more explosive, stronger. It's going to be a tough night for Jennifer Maia. But look, it's the fighting game. All it takes is one swing or one pull or twist, and that's it. So anything can happen.
Anything can happen. I started to mention the October 11th fight night headline. Marlon Moraes versus Corey Sandhagen. What's interesting there is the name I didn't mention. That's Aljamain Sterling. Who has he pissed off that they might be overlooking him?
No, you see, I actually interpret this a different way. So Cody Garbrandt gets a shot, right, down to 125. Moraes and Sandhagen are fighting, which to me means Aljamain Sterling, because he hasn't been booked, is going to be booked against Peter Yan and is not going to get screwed over. That's the way I interpret these schedulings and bookings, which I'm hopeful of, because everyone believes that even if you were to poll all the 135ers, except for Marlon Moraes, they all think that Aljamain Sterling deserves the next bantamweight title shot.
That is the consensus. I want to see the guy fight for it. So
he deserves it, and I think it'd be a really good fight.
Let's discuss what we have coming up here. So we have this review show. We are reviewing UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus, Oleinik Lewis, the Bellator 243 card. Coming up later this week, we're going to have Hulkamania, the matches, the moments, in honor of Hulk Hogan's birthday. We are keeping this strictly to his wrestling world and movie world, that kind of thing, not Hulk Hogan the person, on Friday. So another triple dip we got going on here. On Friday, we are going to have My MMA News' Bob Maloney. We are going to discuss with beautiful Bob Maloney how he got into this fight game as a reporter, an announcer, an interview guy, some of the fighters that he's covered. And we're also going to take a little bit of a look at UFC 252 with him, go over the main event and whatnot. Let's get into it. Let's get into the news. Free agency news. I should get like a news thing here, like a little ticker or something. Corey Anderson has joined Bellator. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Corey Anderson, it looked for a little while like he was well on his way to a title shot. He got knocked out by Jan Blachowicz, and all of a sudden now he's joining Bellator. He was one of the few contenders that actually had developed some heat with John Jones. So I was actually looking forward to them fighting at some point. But obviously John Jones is on the sideline as well with his contract negotiation issues. I think he's going to come in and be, an immediate contender and fight for the belt against Ryan Bader. He probably had to go through a guy like Phil Davis, a former UFC fighter as well. It's a very good acquisition by Bellator. I wouldn't call Corey Anderson a complete needle mover the way I did just a minute ago with Cody Garbrandt, but he is a legitimate top 5 contender at light heavyweight in the UFC. So that's a good acquisition by Bellator.
Yeah, I would say it's a good acquisition by Bellator as well. They need a little bit more, not necessarily, like we just said, that's not name power, but top tier fighting power. So I enjoy the Bellator product, but it needs to go that one extra step to be. I don't know how am I going to word this? Taken seriously by everybody, kind of thing. And the casual fan, because the hardcore MMA fan is going to watch the product. You want to scoop that casual fan in that's going to watch Paramount.
Yeah,
maybe Bellator should sign Paige Van Zandt. They want casual viewers and men. I mean, some of the stuff I've been seeing on Instagram, good Lord, maybe they should do that. But rumor has it, the rumor and innuendo is she's going to go fight for bare knuckle fighting championships.
Yeah,
I don't get it. I mean, I get it from their point; it makes sense, but I don't get it.
I'm surprised on multiple levels. First off, Bellator has as one of their rising, I believe it's either a lightweight or a welterweight contenders. They have Paige Van Zandt's husband. So there's already a relationship there. They're familiar with Paige. Most MMA organizations are familiar with Paige. So you would think that would be an easy signing. Now, it still may come.
Right.
But now, as for the Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, look, it's become a viable organization. They've had several events with some former big names in the world of mixed martial arts. What I don't get, and look, a majority of the reason that Paige Van Zandt is marketable at this stage is she's a very attractive woman. And one of the drawbacks to bare knuckle fighting is the fact that you're going to get cut up a lot more. So why would you want to see this beautiful girl get completely busted up in the face? I mean, when she fought Rose Namajunas, she was bleeding and everything else. And even then, you're kind of like, it's, look, I don't know if that's sexist. I'm not trying to be. I'm just sort of speaking the facts as to how people think of her, and she's gonna get cut up and bruised and split up with respect to her face in a fight, in bare knuckle fighting. So why? I just don't understand the value to that. When she said herself that she could make just as much money outside of the fighting world than she could in it. So then why are you doing this?
Unless they're going to give her a boatload of money, which I don't even know if they have it. I mean, I've seen Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship on NBC Sportsnet.
Yeah,
like at weird hours. So I don't know what the distribution exactly is.
Well, it's a pay-per-view. You get the pay-per-view through the Fight TV app.
So it's a Fight TV thing. So okay, but you really have to go there to watch it. I don't know. I don't know. This was apparently shot down, then it came back again. So who knows? But if Bellator were smart with the connection, that might be a direction to go. It brings eyes, to a fighter with name value. But I'm not spending Viacom, CBS, Larry Coker. Not Larry Coker. That's the coach of the Miami Hurricanes. Goal line standpoint. Scott Coker's money.
It makes all the sense in the world to me to go to Bellator. Plus, I think Paige is still good enough to be at least a quasi-viable contender in Bellator. And she actually has some natural heat with their current flyweight champ, who is also very remarkable, Alimole McFarland. So, I mean, it just makes too much sense not for it not to happen.
Right.
Bellator should step in, make sure she never gets to bare knuckle fight, because she could also get hurt and be like, you know what, I'm done. Yeah. I'd rather her have one more fight in Bellator than in bare knuckle fighting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into some of the training updates. Now, this one is interesting. It has been announced that Khabib will not train for the Gaethje fight with AKA he's going to stay in Dagestan.
Dagestan.
Yeah,
that's all right. It's fine.
Former Soviet Republic.
Yes.
What do you make of this whole thing?
Look, I've been saying now for a few weeks that there's a lot of components to this fight that worry me with Khabib. Obviously, the loss of his father. Then he took the fight fairly quickly after the fact. And now he's not. This is the first time since 2012 that he's not training at all with American Kickboxing Academy. And he's going to stay in Dagestan, which to me, I don't know if he's going to get the proper striking coaching. You have all the grapplers in the world in Dagestan. They're wrestling. I mean, the kids are all wrestling bears. He has plenty of grappling coaches there and grappling training partners. But, he needs Javier Mendez and Bob Cook to kind of round out his game. So I really am. I am starting to lean more and more towards Justin Gaethje pulling off an upset in this because of all of those issues. Now, he cited the virus as the reason he didn't want to come back to the States, and I get that, but I'm amazed some way that they couldn't arrange for, I don't know, for maybe Javier Mendez and Bob Cook to meet him maybe in Abu Dhabi or somewhere and start training. Because I also have a sneaky suspicion that fight is going to take place on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi as compared to the UFC Apex.
I would assume so. I mean, especially with all the travel things going on. And I know Dana White's relationship to the current administration, but at the same time, there's a lot of craziness going on with travel restrictions and whatnot. I mean, I don't know how that works for private jets. Hey, maybe one day I'll be in that boat to know that. Well, hopefully this is done and over with soon, and I won't have to worry about that. But,
and also Khabib is probably either the number 1 or number 2 most famous and recognizable Muslim athlete in the world. Him and that soccer player from Egypt, Mohamed Salah.
Yeah, so
it's soccer. I don't know.
There's a lot going in his favor, but it is certainly going to be interesting and could change the whole outlook of this fight.
Yeah, that's
something to keep an eye on as we move forward.
To me, this is an issue.
Let's get into it. Derek Lewis versus Alexei Oleinik. The card, you went 10-2. Rebound from the chaos that was the previous event, which had people fainting and changes and all that stuff. So we're gonna give you the pass. You picked the entire main card correctly.
Look, there's a reason.
Hold on a second before you. We have to throw this in there. This is for entertainment purposes only.
Yep, absolutely.
Continue.
But there's a reason that when I do the picks, I also put hashtag Brett is all knowing.
That is true. Let's get into it. Let's get into the main event. Derek Lewis defeated Alexei Oleinik via TKO, 21 seconds into round 2. What did Lewis fight this? Was this a smart fight? What's your take on this whole thing?
Well, the first round was not very smart because he ended up playing a grappling game with Alexei Oleinik, who's one of the better grapplers in the heavyweight division. And the last minute and a half of the round, he was in this awkward submission attempt, basically stuffed in Oleinik's armpit, which can't be a pleasant experience. I mean, it can't smell good. So, in the first round, it was clear he had the striking advantage. He was a stronger fighter. All he had to do was what he did in the second round: come out aggressive, throw bombs, and get him out of there. That's why it only took 21 seconds into round 2, and then the fight was done.
Who do you give him next? Him being Derek Lewis.
Yeah, I think it's either Curtis Blades or Alistair Overeem. Assuming Alistair Overeem has a fight booked against Augusto Sakai. So assuming Overeem beats Sakai. Otherwise, you give him Curtis Blades, and the winner of Blades Lewis fights the winner of whomever, DC or Stipe, whoever fights Francis Ngannou for the title. So that it would be like the future number 1 contender fight, because Ngannou is the current number 1 contender.
So it's like the number 3-4 fight.
It's the number 3-4 for the future number 1. Maybe we'll call that 2.
Okay. This is why in pro wrestling they have title belts, so you can say that the Intercontinental Champion, who is the technical number 1 contender to the World Heavyweight. Never mind. Anyway, that's for another part of the program. Let's get to the co-main event. Chris Weidman defeated Omari Akhmedov, unanimous decision, 29-27, 29-27, and 29-28. Weidman, did he impress you?
No, he did
not.
Okay,
then. All right.
He did enough to win, but he does not. He no longer looks like an elite middleweight. I mean, Akhmedov is not a guy who puts people away, and even he hurt Weidman on the feet. It's clear that Weidman has definitive defensive liabilities on the feet, and he was exhausted by the second round. I mean, look, I'm not saying, as compared to me, his gas tank is amazing, but as compared to elite middleweight fighters, I understand it was a grapple heavy first round, but he was absolutely exhausted by the second round. An elite middleweight puts away Akhmedov easily.
So is he a guy, we just discussed it with Bellator and the name value of a Paige Van Zandt and so on. Is he a kind of guy that he's not going to be cut anytime soon?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but would he have a better home somewhere like a Bellator? take money out of the equation, obviously.
Yes and no. So I mean, look, now he's going to be
it's name value.
Yeah, but now he's going to be ranked, so he's going to go up against a higher ranked opponent again because he'll presumably be ranked 11th, 10th. He came into this fight unranked, so he's going to get another shot. To me, the issue is set this fight aside, where he didn't take a ton of damage. He's been getting knocked out a lot, and you talk about quality of life, it's just not worth it.
Right.
So it's one thing if you continue to lose decision after decision. It's another thing when you're getting brutally knocked out fight after fight. And then even in this one, he took like 2 or 3 shots and he was wobbly. His defense is just not on point. The fact that he's taking these shots from a guy like Akhmedov, it doesn't bode well for when he goes higher up in the division.
See, it's funny because if you just throw this out there that Weidman won the fight over Akhmedov 29-27, 29-27, 29-28. That doesn't really show the picture of what occurred.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. He got a 10-8 round.
Yeah, let's get into this again because this is going to be 2 weeks in a row where I'm sorry. I know that the rules changed and all this stuff, but 10-8 round is supposed to be difficult.
Yeah, look.
It can't be given out like candy.
I agree with you. And look, first off, let me give Weidman credit here. In the 3rd round, when this was a very close fight, he summoned up all the energy he had because Akhmedov also does not have a good gas tank, which is why he lost. And Weidman was able to get him on the ground and then was in the mount. And it had either back mount or full mount the entirety of the round. And that's why they gave 10-8 for a positional advantage. He had a few attempts where he had a one-armed arm triangle in there, and it looked kind of close. I mean, Akhmedov was struggling, and that's why they gave the 10-8. Again, it's just, he beat the 11th ranked middleweight in the world. But to me, when afterwards he's like, I'm back, I'm gonna go, I want my title back. Well, when you're evaluating him with the rest of the division, this guy, I don't believe he can get it done. I just don't. It's a shame. I always liked him. I don't see it.
So he's going to get a shot. Obviously, he's going to still be sticking around.
Yeah,
he's just going to be there. Then he's going to be a guy on the card.
Look, it's interesting if the UFC really wants to try. It's interesting. I think you're going to see the amount of faith that the UFC has in him based upon who he's booked up against, who he's matched up against next. So, for instance, if he's matched up and it's a favorable fight, to me that means they're slowly managing his ascent in the rankings. If they book him against the guy who's just a killer, that means, all right, here you go. You think you're that good? And they're just sort of, feeding a sheep off to the wolves.
Right.
That's the way I view that. So it'll be interesting to wait and see where the UFC goes with him.
Yeah. Let's get down to the rest of the card here. This was one of the coolest moments I've seen in a long time in mixed martial arts. Beneil Dariush lands only the 7th spinning back fist knockout in UFC history. And man, did it sound like a baseball bat. Because I watched this late after the fact, and I was kind of like half asleep. I did go back and watch it all over again, but when I missed the initial, as I was watching it live to tape or tape to live, whatever you call it, the first time, it woke me up. And man, it was what a cool moment. What a great finish. It's always fun when you see those things. It's like the video game.
Yeah, look, we're old enough and have started watching this at the time. I mean, the first one was before we were even watching, with Shoney Carter and Matt Serra. And then now there's been 6 more since. But yeah, I mean, first off, he nailed him. It was actually more of the arm.
Yeah, it was like
forearm,
but nailed him. Wrist area. That's when
it sounded like a bat.
Yep.
Hit Holtzman's head, and then Holtzman went just crumpling to the ground. So you heard the noise there because there's no fans. So it was like 2 loud thuds.
And someone said it as it occurred. Oh man, that was loud.
Yeah,
I don't know who it was. I don't know.
Paul Felder was going crazy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was Felder because he was going nuts. But someone verbally said, wow, that was loud. And it was. What did you think of this fight as a whole?
This was a fun fight. These two guys are throwing caution to the wind and just really getting after it with the striking. Dariush is actually far more proficient on the ground. He is a decorated grappler, but he trains out of King's MMA, and Rafael Cordero has gotten his Muay Thai game on point. And he's become a good striker. And lately he's just been getting in these brawls. It's like this last fight with Jakar Close, and just knocks guys out. So he's ranked, shows you how good that division is. That guy is ranked 14th, it's remarkable that there are 13 guys that are better than him, at least right now. That's how it shows you how good lightweight is.
Yeah. What's next for Dariush?
I think it's time to give him someone in the top 10. The problem is that division is so stacked. A lot of those guys in the top 10 are almost reluctant to fight someone lower ranked because it's so hard to ascend up the ladder. An interesting fight, even though they were talking, I'd like to see Paul Felder against Beneil Dariush.
Interesting.
Paul Felder's coming off a loss to Dan Hooker. It's not quite as a highly ranked fight for him. It might be I'm not going to call Beneil Dariush a tune-up, but let him fight someone a little bit lower ranked. For Dariush, it's a test against a top 6 opponent. I really like that fight. There's no heat between. Because Dariush is might be the nicest human being. He's definitely the nicest human being in the UFC. But he's just one of those incredibly nice guys.
Right.
And so is Paul Felder. So it really would be more out of respect. This isn't like a Mike Perry who's going to fight you out of anger and start talking shit and all that. But from a martial arts standpoint, it's an interesting matchup.
Run down the undercard. Give us your thoughts, some of the things that stood out to you.
I thought the Tim Means Laureano Staropoli fight was really interesting. Tim Means is a guy who his technique has always been ahead of his physicality, but he showed a lot of grit, and Staropoli was game. And just they had a really good fight. Tim Means ended up winning via unanimous decision. Then Kevin Holland, who was the unlucky other participant in the scheduled fight against Trevin Giles last week. Trevin Giles is the fighter who fainted right before coming out for the walk. He got booked quickly in this really interesting fight against a newcomer. What was his name? Joaquin Buckley, who was just this yoked middleweight and was throwing bombs in the first round. And Holland stayed cool the whole time. It was really interesting because at the Apex with no fans there, Holland is a shit talker. And you heard he was having a whole conversation with the ref, with Buckley, and then he shut the lights out with a real sneaky overhand right, and Buckley's mouthpiece went flying and he was out. So it was a really good fight. And all in all, the undercard was good. It was an entertaining night of fights.
It was a good night of fights, and the UFC has been putting on good fights.
Yeah.
Let's get to earlier in the week.
Yeah.
Dana White's Contender Series returned. This is our little week 1 review. There were 3 contract winners.
Yes.
Uros Medic, Jordan Levitt, Dustin Jacoby. Let's kind of take a little look at each one of them. Uros Medic TKO'd Mikey Gonzalez in round 1. Well, what's your take on him?
He was the most impressive of the 3 by far. Just first off, he's incredibly big for his weight class, real strong, aggressive, interesting on the mic. He just wouldn't stop talking. But this is a guy who left his family in Slovenia and went all the way to Alaska. I don't know why you apparently, Mike, you'll laugh.
If you go the roundabout way in the land bridge, it's really not that far.
If he traveled through Russia and China, yes.
Just,
Yeah. Well, here, you'd like this as an MTV, as an MTV fan, you'll appreciate this. He apparently he was first drawn to America because of that show, The OC. Do you like that show?
First off, you say it's like I'm an MTV fan. I am a Challenge fan.
You're an MTV fan.
And Jersey Shore and Catfish. Now, I draw the line on crappy reality TV shows like the OC and this other one they got out, Siesta Key or some crap like that. For crappy reality TV, I watched wrestling.
So you're not an OC fan? That's
no.
Isn't that Jay Cutler's wife?
Yeah, I think so. I think
her ex-wife.
Ex-wife. Now, yeah, you only want to pay her $1 or something like that. That's for the goal line stand, I guess.
Yeah, nevertheless, at GL Stand Show, all social media platforms. But
look, everybody's drawn to America for different reasons. His was the OC. So, if you're watching the OC and you see those kind of women, I guess I could understand it.
I guess, but and then somehow he ended up in Alaska. It's an interesting story, nevertheless. But
he was the most opposite of the OC. But hey, well, I wonder what it was like when he got there. If we're going to keep this in the reality TV realm, right? Oh, I'm going to go to the OC, and then you get the Alaskan bush people.
I don't know. Either way, it's definitely an interesting story. But he was by far the best of all 5, and the best and the most deserving of the 3 contract winners. Jordan Levitt, who submitted Luke Flores via arm triangle. Interesting story. The guy, he really bright. Was a political science major. He's putting off law school. If I were him, if I had a message to give him, I'd say put off law school permanently. But so he submitted Flores via arm triangle. Then Dustin Jacoby, he's interesting. He actually fought in the UFC 10 years ago, and then left, became a proficient kickboxer, was fighting in Glory, and then came back. He fought Ty Flores, beat him via unanimous decision. This fight could have been stopped at the end of the 2nd round. I have no idea how Ty Flores made it through the entire fight. This guy showed such heart. He clearly should not be in the UFC, at least right now. But that's the only reason where, Jacoby looked good. And by the end of the 2nd, he was putting it on Flores, and he punched himself out. And in the 3rd round, actually lost the round because he was that gassed. So if I had to rank the 3 contract winners, it would be Medic, Jacoby. I actually don't think Jordan Levitt deserved it. He beat his opponent. He was aggressive on the ground, but he didn't show me the kind of skills that, like the true grappling geniuses in the UFC have. So I still think he only has 6 fights. I would have said, I'd like to see him come back or, fight a little bit more in the regional circuit. But all in all, it was an entertaining week 1.
Let's move on to Bellator 243. I am shocked, I guess is the best way to put it, that the main event ended the way it did. Michael Chandler KO'd Benson Henderson, 209 in round 1. What is the first time Benson Henderson was knocked out in, what did they say, 5 years?
Yeah, I think this may. Yeah, he hadn't been knocked out.
I should remember. I only rewatched it 10, 15, 20 minutes ago.
I think, the last one I could think of was when he lost to RDA in the UFC. That has to be like 6-7 years ago. But yeah, it was interesting. Henderson looked pretty good. They were both exchanging, and then Chandler sort of threw a 1-2, and Henderson sort of overcommitted with the defense with the jab and left his head open right there for the overhand left, and he went pretty much night. Yeah, and it was over. So. Yeah, look, Chandler is an exciting fighter, one of the best fighters in Bellator to have never fought in the UFC. I think it's a shame if he never gets over to the UFC, and I actually don't think he will. He really is loyal. He's kind of like to go to the other side of our show in pro wrestling. He's kind of like the Sting of Bellator. That's the way I view him.
Stay.
Yeah, that's just kind of him and the Pitbull brothers. They're just going to stay in Bellator, and that's just their thing. He's got a lot of fights that he can have. I really enjoy watching him fight.
Anything else stand out to you from the Bellator card?
Oh, Matt Mitrione fought, actually, and he lost via ground and pound to kind of a journeyman. It's amazing. Everyone always says, oh, well, he's kind of new to the sport.
Who, Matt Mitrione?
Yeah, well, people still say, oh, he's new to the sport. No, he's not new to this. He's been fighting now for 10 years almost.
I didn't think Matt Mitrione, and granted, I would have no problem looking. He didn't look right.
He was heavy.
Yeah, he just didn't look right.
Yeah, so he normally fights in the 248 to 253 range. He weighed 262 for this one. So, but it's amazing the guy still to this day has not developed a sufficient grappling game or even an anti-grappling game to the point where you're at least, really good with takedown defense. And once you're on your back to get up immediately and scramble, he just still does not have that ability. And now, they're just random journeymen that are knocking him out. So that was, and Miles Jury lost. Miles Jury won against Georgi Karakanian. It was a decent night of fights. I do agree with you. I was looking at what they've done with the arena. I do like the look more than the Apex. You see a lot of unused space.
Yeah,
these random colors.
Right.
They could condense it a little bit, and I would, maybe put even more screens or something. It would look a little better.
Yeah, I like the whole Bellator. The Bellator presentation. I just think is leaps and bounds better than what the UFC is putting on, and that's just a presentation wise. It has nothing to do with obviously the fights.
I don't like the ramp.
I've always been a fan of the ramp.
I like the ramp in wrestling. I like walking up to the cage. I like the differentiation.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's get into the heavyweight some more. Cage Fury Fighting Championships 82. Our guest, Sean, the Norwegian Nightmare Teed. Go back and check out the archives, both audio and video, or YouTube, which the link is in the bio here. Sean Teed was supposed to fight Chris Dikehouse. He got moved up to UFC 252. There was some unknowns to whether or not he was going to have a fight. Well, he has a fight. Carl Badwater Seum
Manutafa.
Seyu Manutafa, Vi Sikahema's cousin, probably related to The Rock and Roman Reigns. 13 and 11. Badwater has fought in Bellator, KO'd by the aforementioned Matt Metrione.
Yeah,
the Elite XC Professional Fight League. What do you think here?
Well, I'm glad that Sean got a fight. When he was talking with us, he sounded game for fighting anybody. It sounds like he worked really hard in his camp, and he just wants to show off his skills. He definitely now has a striker. Carl likes to stand and bang. I think, and not that I don't believe Sean in his, what he was telling us in terms of his advancements with his striking. He was training with Carl Roberson, but he,
wants to throw.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who he lives and dies just, throwing leather. And I think Sean will have a decided advantage on the ground. And, I'm hopeful he implements that into his game plan.
And
so
that's Wednesday,
it should be interesting. It's Tuesday night.
Tuesday night. UFC Fight Pass. CM Punk and CM Punk is on the call as the color analyst. I forget who.
Yes. Yeah, and that Cage Fury is running a 2-night event. Well, it's not it's technically 2 separate events, right, but 2 nights in a row they're running.
I'm interested in seeing how successful they are with this. As far as, well, I guess everyone who already paid. I'm interested in seeing how this works out after the fact. I wonder if there's going to be anything on it. We can talk with Bob Maloney on Friday. How this is going to work from a payment perspective, right? So obviously no tickets. So you're losing your revenue there. You're on UFC Fight Pass, so you're getting money in some form, some fashion there. But what is it? What's the deal? Like, how this is something that could put an organization under.
Yeah.
So and Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission, the numbers are going to have to be out there. So maybe that's something we look into down the road.
Because I wonder if bookings, I didn't mean to interrupt. I wonder if booking the ECW arena is cheaper as compared with their typical venues in Atlantic City.
I'd imagine it probably is.
Yeah.
I also imagine it's probably less political headache.
Yeah.
Than New Jersey. At this point, I'm surprised that venues in Atlantic City aren't saying, please, just come here and pay us a little bit so we have space. Who knows? Who knows what the whole background is? We'll get into that. We'll ask Bob, because we live in an area of the country where we have a lot of regional MMA promotions, and they're right under that big time promotion. So guys that are fighting in Ring of Combat, like Lenny Rufati, Sean Teed, and Cage Fury Fighting Championships, they're going on to the UFC, Bellator rather quickly. So you don't want to see this go away.
Yep, absolutely.
Let's get into the main event of this here program, our UFC 252 preview. Miocic Cormier, the battle for the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time, as you say.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, we're going to get into that next week in our main event with our top 5 heavyweights of all time. But this is
number 3.
This is the trilogy fight. Yep.
So looking back on their other fights, which of the first 2 fights do you think gives us a greater look into this fight? Or is it kind of like Sean T mentioned last week with us, each fight is its own thing?
So if you were to talk to Stipe, he would say each fight is its own thing, and the first one was a fluke. I think the second one is most instructive. And oddly enough, I actually think at times both of them look their best during this trilogy. And what I mean by that is, if you look, Stipe knocked out or stopped Cormier in the 4th round. And if you were to look at the scorecards at that point in the 4th round, Cormier was well ahead on every scorecard. Cormier in the first 3 rounds looked spectacular. It was interesting in the countdown. Miocic's cornerman actually was talking about how bad Stipe. He kind of made it look like Stipe was doing poorly as compared with Daniel Cormier doing well. But so to me, though, the second fight is the most instructive one. I mean, it really does look like Cormier landed he just hit the right spot in the first fight, and Stipe went down. Because in the second fight, Stipe took tremendous shots over and over and over throughout several rounds and didn't even buckle. So can Cormier knock him out? Absolutely. And obviously Miocic can stop. Stipe can definitely stop Cormier. But we also saw in that fight that Cormier can easily win a decision, I believe, if he just is a little bit more prudent with his defense and sticks a little bit more to his wrestling.
Who do you think that the smaller cage favors in this contest?
You could make an argument for both, because I'm sure, you could easily say, look, it's easier for Stipe to find Cormier, but Cormier likes to be pretty much right in the pocket. I think it probably benefits Cormier more because it benefits his wrestling, because it allows him to set up better angles than you would in the larger cage.
William Hill has both guys at -110. Who do you have in this fight, the third?
This is also tough, and I'll be the first to acknowledge, and for those of you that watched one of our first ever episodes, Daniel Cormier is my favorite MMA fighter, and this might be his retirement match. From all accounts, it's been an essentially injury-free training camp. I really just think the wrestling puts it over for him, and if he sticks to a more well-rounded game plan, I have Cormier winning via unanimous decision, regaining the heavyweight championship.
And stepping away?
That's another interesting question. I think he wants to. I think there's this guy called John Jones and this thing called money that might change that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I would love, there doesn't even have to be a belt on the line. I would love to see John Jones fight Daniel Cormier at heavyweight, because I think Cormier was so depleted at light heavyweight, you never saw the best of Cormier. Now, it might turn out that we never saw the best of John Jones either, and that at heavyweight, he's just even better. but I'd love to find out.
Sean O'Malley, Marlon Vera. Sean O'Malley minus 280, Marlon Vera plus 230 on William Hill. How dangerous of an opponent is Marlon Vera as compared to Eddie Wineland? That is for Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, absolutely. This is by far a real step up in competition for Sugar Sean, and really a great fight. This is good booking because Marlon Vera. For those that have not watched his fights, I'd highly encourage you, YouTube or those who are who have UFC Fight Pass, go back and watch his fights. This is a well-rounded fighter. Fights really intelligently, can grapple. Just even though he may not be ranked, he is right outside the top 15, and he could give anybody from like 5 to 15 a really tough night. So I really like this fight, and it presents other issues. Eddie Wineland was a tough guy who had a bit of a resurgence a little bit later in his career, but Marlon Vera is the next generation of fighter. Marlon Vera is like a Sean O'Malley. So that's why this is a tougher fight for O'Malley.
Does Vera take this thing to the ground?
I think he should. Because, I mean, no one really in these fights has tested O'Malley's ground game. So I would definitely see if O'Malley is as good and as competent on the ground as he is as a striker. Because it's clear that O'Malley is a good striker. Marlon Vera is a good striker too, so they could definitely stand and bang, but I would at least test it out.
What is your prediction?
I'm still riding the hype train. I think Sean O'Malley wins. I will tell you this: if he wins by stoppage, we legitimately he deserves a top 5 guy at that point. But I actually think he's going to get a decision win.
Jairzinho Rosenstruck minus 150 versus Junior Dos Santos plus 125. Who is the more dangerous striker in this matchup?
Currently, I would say Rosenstruck. If this fight occurred, if this was the JDS of 7-8 years ago, I'd say JDS. Look, there was a time when JDS was the best heavyweight striker in the game, but that time is since gone. He's still a crafty veteran, and he's an excellent boxer. He's not really known for his kicks other than his one knockout of Mark Hunt with a spinning back kick. Other than that, but the thing is, he doesn't have the same kind of chin. The guy's been through wars, his trilogy with Velasquez, his 2 fights with Stipe and other fights. He just doesn't have the chin to have that kind of war. And Jairzinho could really shut the lights out of any heavyweight. So definitely going Rosenstruck there with the more dangerous striker.
If you're going to have a Junior Dos Santos victory, how does he pull it off?
I think, he has a ground game, which he very rarely shows. And Rosenstruck, exhibited a really poor ground game when he fought Alistair Overeem a few fights ago. He was taken down repeatedly, held down there. And it wasn't until literally the last second of the 5th round when he finally knocked out Overeem. So to me, JDS needs to employ a mixed martial arts strategy as opposed to a boxing strategy to beat Rosenstruck.
Your prediction?
Even though I think that's what JDS should do, I think he still believes he's just the best striker in the game, and I think Rosenstruck knocks him out towards the end of round 1.
Moving on to the bantamweights, Dalshvili minus 180 versus John Dodson plus 155. What's the more impressive trait here? Dodson's athleticism or Dalshvili's pressure?
I think it's Merab. That's Dalshvili's first name. I think it's Merab's pressure because it lasts the entire fight. Dodson's gas tank has failed him a few times, particularly against Demetrius Johnson. And sometimes it's almost his own head where he just becomes hesitant. So with Merab, he just comes forward. Doesn't matter. And I'm interested to hear Bob talk about this because I know he's interviewed Merab a handful of times. He's just an exciting fighter with just limitless cardio. So that's how I think Merab's traits are more impressive.
Now, whose traits are going to make it more difficult for the other guy?
I think it's Merab with the pressure, just the forward pressure. That Khabib style that a lot of the Russians employ. Merab is Georgian, so one of the former Soviet republics. That's where Joseph Stalin came from. Just give me a little history background.
You're Georgian, not the country, the country, not the state.
Yes.
Your prediction.
I have Merab winning via unanimous decision.
Ankalaev minus 300 versus this is Kulaba.
This is gonna be a fun fight. These guys fought at UFC Norfolk, which was the undercard of the Figueiredo Benavidez first fight.
Was it the scope?
Yeah. Well, I don't think the scope exists anymore.
I don't know.
I think it's the new scope.
Oh, the new scope. Okay.
Yeah, the updated scope. So for those that have seen him before, Iwan Cutelaba refers to himself as the Hulk. Sometimes for weigh-ins will literally dress and color himself in green like the Hulk. He, during this fight, he gets in the cage and walks right over to Ankalaev, and they almost come to blows before the introduction. And it was just a wild fight. The fight was stopped prematurely because they thought that Cutelaba was hurt when he wasn't. He literally just tripped over his own feet. But I cannot wait for this fight. This is going to be fireworks. Cutelaba is just, it's rock'em sock'em robots, move forward, and either kill or be killed. Ankalaev is more of the technical striker, but still he has a little bit of that crazy too. And Cutelaba seems to be able to draw that out of him. So this is a fun fight. This is honestly the perfect pay-per-view card opener fight. You couldn't book a better opening fight for a pay-per-view.
Get a good one.
Exactly.
Who's the crazier of the two?
Oh, without Iwan Cutelaba, he's just nuts.
Your prediction?
I'm going Ankalaev. I don't know. Doesn't it sound like you're saying Uncle Iev?
Yeah.
I'm not making fun of him. I'm just, maybe that should be his nickname. He should be the uncle. I don't know.
Go to the undercard.
Uncle Buck.
Go undercard. What are you excited to see on the undercard?
There's actually a few. This is really a deep card. One of our favorites, Mike, Jim Miller's back, fighting again in the UFC.
Jersey's finest, baby.
Jersey's finest. This guy is just a machine fighting Vince Pichel. Should be a really good fight. Two of my favorite female fighters, not just because they're both very pretty, but they have really good scraps. Ashley Yoder is fighting Lavinia Souza, and then Felice Herrig is coming back. She from more than a year layoff. She tore her ACL and then had, I think, some infection issues during the rehab. She's fighting Verna Jandiroba. And then I'm also really interested, Mike, to see Chris Dackhouse, who was supposed to fight Sean Teed at CFFC 82. His fight against Parker Porter, which opens up the night on the prelims. So there's a lot of good fight. It is like, look, I get every pay-per-view just because if there's fights, I'm going to get them. But if this is like a pay-per-view where you're on the fence, this is worth the money. This is a great pay-per-view. And so are the next several. The summer and fall in the UFC is just fantastic.
And remember, when you're looking to buy this on pay-per-view, and this isn't a commercial, they're not sponsoring us, but you have idiots like me that forget that it's not on traditional pay-per-view anymore, and it's an ESPN Plus pay-per-view. So you have to go onto the ESPN Plus app and order there because there's not a damn cable channel with the fight.
That is true.
It doesn't make sense, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. But you can then watch through an app on your phone, your computer, or a smart TV.
Yeah, but it should. What if you don't have a smart TV and you want to?
I agree.
Thing?
Well, I don't have a smart TV. I had to buy an Apple TV.
So I have a smart TV and it's fine, but at the same time, Actually, ESPN Plus has been pretty good. Like the WWE Network, the drizzling shits when it comes to watching stuff live. Well, at least it used to be when people actually watched it, not this junk that it is now. That's for another episode. We're not, as you can tell, we're not talking wrestling this week, other than our Hulk Hogan show coming up on Wednesday. Hulk Hogan, the matches, the moments. Friday, my MMA news is Bob Maloney. He is going to further discuss this card with us, UFC 252. And we're going to discuss a little bit of his roots of fight, how he got involved, that kind of thing. We're going to have to ask him about his peppers as well. He's a pepper guy. He plants peppers, scorpion peppers. Won't try them himself, though. Tries to pawn it off on the other people. Coming up next week, our top 5 big men, our heavyweights in MMA. After that, SummerSlam, the matches, the moments there. Drop your favorite SummerSlam moments, your favorite top 5 MMA heavyweights at our Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, which is where?
At GL's. No, it's not. It's at In the Fight Show.
It is
on all social media. You can also follow us on at GL Stand Show for our other show, which is football. We're in the midst of our 32 teams in 32 days previews, which is also on our exclusive YouTube page.
Correct.
We've had a lot of fun doing that so far. We have had 2 up. We have yesterday we covered the Los Angeles Chargers, and today we covered the Las Vegas Raiders. Tomorrow, the Broncos of Denver,
and then the world champion Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, and then the rest of the league.
Yes.
Until then, stay safe, and we will see you.